ghouls and fiends, and welcome once again to another edition of Sunday Morning Ministry of Horror. That's right. We're doing probably the earliest recording in the day of a Ministry of Horror in probably ever. I'm tired. I didn't really sleep well, and I've just been to the gym, so I probably should have had a shower first. But here we are. We're doing the Ministry of Horror because I should have recorded this a few days ago. So apologies. This is hitting Patreon on Sunday, 9th of February, and regular platform areas, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, 2 days later, 48 hours later. So better late than never, hey. It's been a time. We've been doing a lot of Twitch recently, and I've been having a great time over there. So if you haven't already, head to twitch.tv/Tezzius, Tezzrus. That's my channel where I do a bit of streaming. We do the aim, I think, is going to be to start returning to doing every other week as a live stream. The show originally used to be an every week live stream, and over time that just wasn't really kind of working best or as beneficial for work life outside of stream balance. So we did trial for quite a little while the every other week format, which was good, but then I suppose I kind of ended up finding myself enjoying just recording the shows a bit more. But I'm not entirely sure what kind of changed along the way, but I've kind of really been enjoying streaming again. We've done, I don't really know what changed along the way. I think it's because we figured out that we can still do watch parties, not necessarily the watch-alongs or watch parties as they were, because it used to be that we could just do a watch party, and my stream would stream out the film to people who have a Prime membership linked to their account. But ultimately, not everyone had a Prime membership that would still come along to the stream anyway. So yeah, it kind of just worked as to let's just watch a film. We'll sync up when we're watching it and we'll have a good time. And then from there, I kind of figured, look, okay, the Twitch channel, it's not much, but it can help fund, wedding and honeymoon bills. So I've really been kind of jumping in with both feet. We've done in 30 days almost 20 hours of streaming, which, grand scheme of things isn't a huge amount, but in terms of the channel, it's a massive jump up from where it had been. So I really do appreciate everyone who's recently followed the channel or been following the channel for a long time, and also people that are subscribing to the channel. That's massive for my little channel. Really, really do appreciate that. So I've got to do my usual call to arms if you haven't already. If you have a Prime membership, one of the benefits of that is you can link it up to Twitch. Now, not only do you get free video games just from doing that, which a lot of people just don't even realize because it's not really advertised, but by linking your Prime membership to Twitch, yeah, each month there's like a number of games. I think you've now got BioShock Infinite Complete Edition. It's just dropped on there. The Talos Principle Gold Edition, Sands of Aura, Ender Lilies, Blood West, BioShock 2, Super Meat Boy Forever, Deus Ex Game of the Year Edition, Zombie Army 4, just to name a few that you can just claim. You can just go ahead and claim. But you also get a free monthly sub. Now, what you do have to do is each month it will then run out and you have to then sub again, if you so choose. But it doesn't cost you anything. It's part of your Prime membership. So I'd really appreciate, if you haven't already, follow the channel, twitch.tv/Tezzius, Tezzrus. But also, if you can, or if you so wish, give the channel a subscription. And I'd really appreciate that. So I initially was very hesitant to do this hands and knees begging, because I always just think it's kind of cringy. But ultimately, we've got to do what you got to do, and if there's ways that you can support the channel because you get enjoyment out of it, that's amazing. And we also have a Patreon, patreon.com/Ministry of Horror, where The show goes out 48 hours earlier than the other platforms, so that's one benefit. There are also membership tiers where, you can $5, you can get me a cup of coffee. Really appreciate that. I love my coffee. I'm already drinking one here. This will be the first of many today because, as I say, did not sleep for shit. We then got $12 a month Ghoul level. That's where you get the latest Ministry of Horror 48 hours before other platforms. You also will get a new monthly bonus show, which we're going to be recording in the next week or so, called 90 Slay Fiancé. I'm going to give a shout out to regular listener Fran the Cannon for that title. So a lot of this drive is for my wedding and honeymoon, and my fiancé, a listener of the show occasionally as well, Vix, will be joining me on a little journey where it'll essentially be her show with me there to pepper in every so often. But I'm going to be showing her a horror film or horror adjacent film that she's never seen before to get her opinion on it and to get her insight. She does enjoy some horror. She's a big fan of creature features, loves the Shark Attack film. But with that in mind, I'm a huge David Lynch fan. She's never seen David Lynch before. I thought we'd start off with something very moderate in terms of one of his most revered films, Mulholland Drive. So I'm not going to mention any more on it, but that is a bonus with that level. You've then got the $25 a month level, the Fiend level. You get a shout out on the show along with a regular request for a film review, get the extras from the previous levels. And then there's also the $60 a month tier, Demonic level, where you get to come on the show to talk horror. We discuss a featured presentation of your choice, and then you get the extras of the previous levels. I'm going to be regularly kind of reviewing these levels and making sure that you get the most bang for your buck and that they are fair and whatnot. So if there is feedback and whatnot, let me know. And you can do that via Patreon as well. There's, you can have a community chat or a direct chat. Loads of cool stuff on there. Anyway, I kind of think I've done the necessary plugging for the opening period of the show. Outside of that, so gaming wise, we've been doing on the Twitch channel, back to plugging straight away, Dead Space, which is terrifying. I've even moved it down to story difficulty setting, and I'm still terrified, even though the likelihood of me dying is massively reduced. The chill stream has been Life is Strange Double Exposure. It's getting going now. It has been one of the slower entries in the series to get going, but it has been moving along nicely. And then we did a bonus stream. My evening freed up on Thursday. So we played a bit of Somar. Somar is a game that I've had in my Xbox library for years. I got it for like £2 in a sale about 3 or 4 years ago. Never played it. We played that for a bit. I don't think I'm going to be continuing it. I didn't really like it. There's a lot of walking around in pitch black darkness. Didn't really like that one. So, but today, so if you're hearing this on Patreon, you're getting a heads up. But I will share on socials, at Ministry of Horror, all social platforms. We're going to be doing a little stream for something I've been talking about, sort of doing for a little while, and this may be a new show as well. Not a Patreon exclusive one, because I never mentioned it being Patreon before, and I discussed doing the show prior to Patreon even being a thing for us. But we are finally going to do a retro stream. So last week I did a very, very short stream because I got very frustrated of WWF No Mercy on the Nintendo 64. And I was really pleased how well the N64 was connecting up to our software, and I thought it looked great on the stream. My frustration came from the fact that I didn't look up the controls first, and there's no, like on modern games where you can just go control list. Doesn't have that. Well, not that I could find. So I couldn't ever finish any of the matches. So I got quite pissed off, to be honest. But what we are going to do, I was initially thinking of doing GTA Vice City. But on second thoughts, I think I'm going to have some issues because of the music, the licensed music in that. It may be that streaming that I get quite a few views retroactively on the VODs, which is really, really nice. But I kind of figured, maybe that's not going to work out so well, because those streams, I imagine, would be muted due to copyright, and I don't want to get any copyright strikes. So we're going to do Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time, on the Nintendo 64. A game that I've started a number of times, but I've never once actually completed. Back in the day when I had it on the N64, and it was probably my favourite game on the Nintendo 64, I got as far as when you get to the period of being adult Link, and I'd got to the Sandy area. I think that's where you meet Shiva or Sheev, whatever the name is. Can't remember. Obviously, never finished it. So I didn't get much further than that. Outside of that, over the years, I've sort of tried a few different versions. I think it was like on GameCube. I had briefly had a GameCube, one of the Nintendo consoles that I had for a moment, and then sold like the Wii and other ones. You know, Sega had the Dreamcast for just there. I got it cheap and then never used it many years ago. But anyway, a little while ago, I'd picked up a Nintendo 3DS purposely because I wanted to play Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. I tried it on the Switch online store because it's on there on the Switch membership, which is very, very good value for money, I should say. It's like £34 for the year and loads of retro games on there. But the control mapping just did not work for me on the Switch. It just did not. I hated it. Looked great, but I hated it. So I have been playing it on the 3DS, but I just haven't picked up the 3DS for a while. Just haven't really had the time. But now that I've finally got a little HDMI connector, it's not an upscaler, but it's a connector, because the upscaler is like hundreds of pounds, and this was like £20. We're finally going to do Legend of Zelda on the way that it should be played, Nintendo 64, and we're going to stream it. If this leads into me starting that new retro game-based show, then maybe. I mean, if I'm playing games more often, then I've kind of got a bit more to talk about. And that was going to be a retro-focused kind of show anyway, but I think to do that, I would need to, you know, spend a bit of time, source a new kind of layout. I mean, I'd probably do that as an audio-only thing, maybe. Don't know, because then you've got the whole thing of if you're using game footage, you have to provide the copyright stuff and all that bollocks. I don't know. But we are going to be streaming that later on. And before we continue on the show, I should also do the shout outs to the members. So shout out to Gareth, Paul, and James. Thank you very much for being members of the Patreon. Now, without further ado, it is time. I don't think I've got anything else to blather on about. I haven't touched my Warhammer painting this week. It's been a very busy week. I'll probably try and finish the current figurine that I've been doing and then start making up the rest of them. I'm not even going to entertain, one, same for a wedding, can't be buying stuff, but I'm not even going to entertain anything else Warhammer wise until I've built up the remaining figures and painted them, and then we'll see, because it's a lot of fun. It's very therapeutic, but I do it in such short spells. Every so often, like once a week, I'll spend half an hour, and that's it. So it's very, very slow progress, but it's nice. Anyway, Ghouls and Fiends, it's about time that I haven't even talked about what we're going to be reviewing later on. Jesus, I'm all over the place, guys. So we're going to talk about the news in a moment, and then the reviews we've got later on. We finally have a retro review. We're going to be reviewing Michael Mann's The Keep. We've then also got a review of Lovely, Dark and Deep and Dark Match, the Wrestling Jericho starring horror film. But those are a bit later on. Anyway, it's about time for the horror news. This is the news. Oh, oh, oh.
You hang up on me again, I'll cut you like a fish, understand?
Good excuse to get a swig of coffee there. Okay, horror news. So, as per usual, all our horror news comes from bloodydisgusting.com. Great news site, reviews, all that stuff. This is a write-up from John Squires, and it is the 4 new horror films released as of Friday, February 7th. So first up, Lee Whannell's Wolfman already made its way out of theatres this week and howled its way home. The Universal Monsters reboot is now available on digital outlets. You can rent Wolfman for $19.99 or purchase it for $24.99. In Wolfman, seeking a fresh start, Blake moves his wife Charlotte and daughter Ginger to his childhood home in rural Oregon. Upon arrival, they encounter a brutal animal attack, forcing the family to barricade themselves inside the house as an unseen creature prowls the perimeter. As the night wears on, Blake's injuries worsen and his bizarre behaviour turns monstrous. To protect her daughter, Charlotte must decide whether to confront the danger outside or the growing horror within. Lee Whannell's Wolfman's currently still playing in theatres if you'd rather see it on the big screen. Worldwide, the monster movie has scared up 32.6 million at the box office. Yeah, I can't necessarily say Wolfman was disappointing because I went in it with fairly low hopes. I thought the trailers looked like okay, but Universal monster properties just haven't really been able to kind of get back on track, really. Lee Whannell obviously had some pedigree with Invisible Man, which I thought was decent. I didn't think it was incredible. I thought it was decent. I don't have anything bad to say about it, but it didn't necessarily make me go, "Oh yeah, Invisible Man." So it's fine. It's very dark. Like you can't really see what's going on in some moments. It's okay. I just think could have been better, but it's okay. Next up, this Valentine's Day, no couple is safe. The filmmakers behind Freaky, Happy Death Day, and Werewolves Within team for slasher movie Heart Eyes, now playing in theatres. Josh Rubin directed the Valentine's Day themed Heart Eyes with Mason Gooding and Olivia Holt starring. For the past several years, the Heart Eyes killer has wreaked havoc on Valentine's Day by stalking and murdering romantic couples. This Valentine's Day, no couple is safe. Gigi Zumbedo and Michael Watkins will also star in the upcoming Heart Eyes alongside Devon Sawyer and Jordana Brewster. The new horror movie from Screen Gems and Spyglass features a screenplay written by Philip Murphy and Christopher Landon and Michael Kennedy. So this does look pretty cool. I've seen the trailer. It looks pretty neat. Devon Sawyer and Jordana Brewster have some decent horror pedigree behind them. Josh Rubin, I do like. Talked before. I always found him hilarious on College Humor, which is now Dropout, which is behind a paywall. And Wales Within I thought was decent. Scare Me was actually better than I thought the trailers made it look. I guess I'm a little bit nervous of the Christopher Landon and Michael Kennedy connection. Happy Death Day and Freaky. Although Freaky I thought was decent. Happy Death Day was decent. I think when I say nervous is because it just feels like there's just this typical trope, which is almost becoming a bit like, oh, well, if they're behind a film, then it's going to be some sort of body switch or time jump or whatever. And that's a little bit overly pessimistic on my behalf. Their films aren't bad. I haven't watched them and thought, oh god, that's crap, But it's just this little bit of a trope that I'm not that fussed with, to be honest. But doesn't necessarily mean that's the case here, so I will reserve judgment until I've seen it. Next, two nuns will put their souls at risk when they violate the church's order in the Korean exorcism horror movie Dark Nuns, now playing in United States theatres from Welgo, USA after topping the South Korean box office upon release just last month. In Dark Nuns, after learning that the priest cannot arrive in time to save a young boy possessed by a powerful evil spirit, two nuns take on the dangerous forbidden exorcism ritual themselves in direct violation of the church's sacred order, putting both their lives and their immortal souls in grave danger. Song Kyu Kyo, John Young Bin, Lee Jin Wook, and Moon Woo Jin star. Dark Wars is directed by Kwon Hyung Jae. Supernatural Thriller is currently a spin-off to the 2015 horror film The Priests. While The Priest isn't currently available to stream stateside, Dark Nuns isn't a direct sequel and follows a different story and characters. I don't really have much to say on that. I haven't seen the trailer. I haven't seen The Priests. I'm very out of the loop when it comes to modern K horror, modern Eastern horror. I am out of the loop. I will say that I am determined to finally get around to watching a film called Midnight. We talked about it on the news a while ago, quite a long time ago, and I thought the setup for that sounded pretty cool. Of a blind or deaf, I can't remember. I think it's like a blind person it's a blind individual is essentially a witness to a serial killer murdering. And then there becomes this whole cat and mouse chase, which I thought, oh, cat and mouse thriller, yes, sign me up. It is on Shudder, so I do need to just sit down and watch it. I think it's just a case of I need to be in the right headspace to just go, right, this film has my full attention. My phone isn't in my hand. I'm reading the subtitles. Boo, I'm in. So yeah, I need to get back into the swing of things with foreign horror. And then finally, for the new films, a deadly game of 20 questions proves that some questions are best left unanswered in Are You There?, which Dark Sky Films released in select theatres and on digital today. Laura Solette, Eva Meyerson, Madison Geiger, Mbeng Clovis, and Chase Bridges star in Are You There? Kim Noonan directed from a script by Vicky Voss. In the movie, paranormal psychology student Rosa Gonzalez lights a ritual candle used to contact the dead. Then she opens the door to a demonic game of 20 questions. No comment. No comment. I'm not familiar with any of the cast and crew here. The setup, I mean, I don't know. I've not watched the trailer for this one. I've got nothing to add really, which is great for a podcast. We'll move on, and I'll have a swig of my coffee before it goes cold. Bill Skarsgård joins Hugh Jackman in A24's The Death of Robin Hood. John Squires writes, Michael Sarnowski directs the upcoming dark reimagining of The Death of Robin Hood for A24, and Deadline reports the latest casting news today. Bill Skarsgård, Murray Bartlett, and Noah Jupe will star alongside the previously announced Hugh Jackman and Jodie Comer. A24 is planning a theatrical release for the film here in the United States. The Death of Robin Hood is said to be a darker reimagining of the classic Robin Hood tale. Set of its time, the film will see the title character grappling with his past after a life of crime and murder, a battle-worn loner who finds himself gravely injured and in the hands of a mysterious woman who offers him a chance at salvation. Michael Sarnowski wrote the screenplay and will be directing the film. This is not the story of Robin Hood we've all come to know, teased Aaron Ryder and Andrew Sweet of RPC. Instead, Michael has crafted something far more grounded and visceral. Okay. You got A24, you got Bill Skarsgård, who is really emerging as a face or a mask in horror these days, and Hugh Jackman and Jodie Comer, obviously very, very talented and renowned actors. When it comes to the tale of Robin Hood or a darker reimagining, a darker reimagining could be interesting, but Robin Hood feels like they've sort of tried to revamp that a number of times over the last 10, 20 years, and it just hasn't really hit. I think the last Robin Hood tale that did well was the Kevin Costner film from 92 or something like that. Quite old now. I know that there was a Ridley Scott version, which I don't know how well that was received, and then there was the one a little while ago that I don't know. That it feels like they kind of came out and disappeared and didn't really kind of hit us. Oh man, you've got to see this. You just didn't really hear any buzz about them. So, okay, I don't want to write it off too soon, but it doesn't feel like the Robin Hood tale is one that will connect anymore. Who knows? Maybe we are due a good take on the Robin Hood story where it's something we haven't seen before. But I don't know. I don't know. Next up, The Substance wins 3 Critics' Choice Awards, and Demi Moore shouts out overlooked horror movies. John Squires writes, while we wait to see if Coralie Faget's, I have no idea if I'm pronouncing that correctly, The Substance takes home any Academy Awards this year, the film just scored some major awards on the road to the Oscars. At the Critics' Choice Awards last night, the body horror masterpiece starring Demi Moore was nominated in 7 total categories and took home 3 awards. The Substance is a Critics' Choice Awards winner in the following categories: Best Actress, Demi Moore; Best Original Screenplay, Coralie Faget; Best Hair and Makeup, Stephanie Goulion, Frédéric Argiolo, Pierre-Olivier Persson. While accepting her award for Best Actress, Demi Moore made it a point to give a shout-out to the many horror films that have been ignored at the big awards shows over the years. This is so far beyond anything I could have hoped for, Moore began her speech, which you can watch online now. I just want to say the very recognition, not just for me, but for what this film is about, what it's trying to convey. Your acknowledgement is almost like the elixir. It is the healing balm to the very issue the film brings forward. I'm so grateful, not just for my performance, but that you have highlighted this film and this genre. Moore added, normally horror films are overlooked and not seen for the profundity that they can hold. Not familiar with that word. Fellow Critics' Choice winner Kathy Bates, who famously won an Oscar back in 1991 for her performance in Misery, celebrated Demi Moore's win backstage at the event last night. I did see The Substance. I think it's great, said Bates. Demi Moore has done amazing work, and I love seeing her being recognised for this. It's an absolutely bonkers movie, but I just think when you make a real human being, no matter what the genre is, you make a real human being people can relate to, and then you're in. Demi Moore also won a Golden Globe for her performance in The Substance earlier this year, so it would seem she's well on her way to winning her first Academy Award next month. Let's manifest it, horror fans. So the 97th Academy Awards airs March 2nd from the Dolby Theatre at Ovation Hollywood. It's well earned, and she is well due it. I think everyone in The Substance does an incredible job, but Demi Moore and the other lead, whose name I do not know off the top of my head, do an incredible job in that film. Like, The Substance really far exceeded my expectations. I thought the trailers for it looked pretty cool, pretty edgy, very aesthetically pleasing, but I didn't know necessarily if it would be more style over substance. But really, it is an absolutely brilliant film, and the finale is bonkers. Like, it takes body horror to a realm that I just hadn't expected in the film, and it's got some moments that look bloody brilliant, but just disgusting, quite frankly. So this is incredible news, and congratulations to Demi Moore. Well earned. Next in horror news, Shawn Ashmore and Garrett Dillahunt star in serial killer thriller The Huntsman. Alex DiVincenzo writes, Shawn Ashmore of X-Men fame and Garrett Dillahunt, Fear the Walking Dead, star in The Huntsman, a serial killer thriller based on the 2022 novel of the same name by nurse-turned-author Judith Sanders. Strike Global Media is serving as the sales representatives for the film, which will premiere at the upcoming European film market in Berlin, Deadline reports. Ashmore stars as an ICU nurse who volunteers as a reader for a recovering coma patient who is the prime suspect in the savage murders of 6 young women in a small southwestern town. Elizabeth Mitchell co-stars as the suspect's wife, struggling with the mounting complexities of the investigation. With a seasoned detective played by Jesse Schramm on the case, numerous suspects come to light, and each new revelation leads to a shocking twist. Kyle Kwaki Harris directs from a script he co-wrote with Stephen John Reitner. Okay. You know me. You know me when it comes to thrillers. If we can get a good thriller that does well, I'm all for it. Shawn Ashmore, he's a good actor, and Aaron Ashmore, but unfortunately, for whatever reason, I don't know, just never really seem to be the front and center stars of big films. They've been in a number of big projects, and had good roles. I mean, the Kevin Bacon starring The Following was really good on the whole for its 3 seasons. Ups and downs, but generally it was pretty good for horror TV. And he's had some great roles, but they've never really kind of hit to that next level. I think with thrillers, I think you do get good thrillers that go under the radar, or can't be that conventional 90s thriller of hunting a serial killer or taking that approach. It seems to be that genre maybe has changed a bit over time, and maybe I just sort of yearn for that classic procedural hunt, cat and mouse chase. I don't know if this necessarily sounds like that, but I want to give it the chance, and hopefully it does well. But yeah, I mean, the poster looks fairly basic. Doesn't make me think that this is going to be a big renowned hit, more of a limited release or a direct to streaming type film, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But it does say down here that it keeps you on the edge of your seat and has a touch of nostalgia for the great classic thrillers of the 90s. So if it does that, okay, great, you got me. If it doesn't, boo-hoo. Video game news. Chernobylite 2 Exclusion Zone heads to Steam Early Access on March 6th. Mike Wilson writes, suffice to say, the Farm 51's Kickstarter for Chernobylite 2 Exclusion Zone has been a success. Having crushed its goal of €95,000, the developer has announced that Chernobylite 2 will be heading into early access on Steam March 6th. In addition, the team has released a new story trailer for the game which focuses on Cole Gray, a former military and security guard. Cole lives in a reality where the economy and industry are based entirely on a substance called Chernobylite. With his help, people have made a real leap in civilization. However, the construction of the utopia has been paid for by massive unemployment, pushing people like Cole to the margins of society. Due to severe financial problems, he joins the mysterious Planewalker initiative to provide for his family. It quickly becomes apparent that there is a shortage of Chernobylite in Cole's universe, and the solution is the morally questionable initiative that involves travelling to parallel worlds in search of the mineral and obtaining it by any means possible. In addition, the Planewalker service requires appropriate genetic modifications. Cole must, therefore, physically absorb the essence of Chernobylite and, to increase his physical and intellectual capabilities, lose a part of his humanity. However, seeing no other options for himself, he agrees to the bloody and dangerous service, which results in him ending up trapped in the most sinister place in the world, the Chernobyl Exclusion Zone. There he meets a Black Stalker, the zone's dark guide and silent ruler. Oh, Jesus Christ, that was a lot. I've never actually played Chernobyl. I think it's because the initial game that I looked at, and I may well be getting it mixed up with another game, it looked like a kind of a Souls-like in this kind of steampunk type world. So I may well be completely wrong here, and maybe mixing up with something absolutely non-connected at all. But I've never given it a go. This sounds very different. I think it's a first-person game. There is a trailer. I'm going to hit play, but yeah, it's got it muted. Let's just skip ahead. Graphics look decent. A lot of hand-to-hand combat. Doesn't really sort of show. I mean, I suppose it's an early access game. Doesn't really show the gameplay. Doesn't really give me anything to go on there. Looks all right. First-person combat. A little pop-up heading says so. Yeah. Okay, probably not for me. Let's move on. And then finally on the news, Robert Eggers says upcoming Werewolf is the darkest thing he's ever written. John Squires writes, it was announced at the start of the year Robert Eggers will be following up Nosferatu with Werewolf for focus features, which has already been dated for release in 2026. Set in the 13th century and being described as a medieval horror movie, Robert Eggers' Werewolf will howl its way into theatres for focus features on Christmas Day 2026. On stage at a recent event, Eggers promised, or warned, perhaps, that Werewolf is shaping up to be the darkest horror movie he's ever made, and that's saying something. Eggers teases it's a medieval werewolf movie, and it's also the darkest thing I've ever written, by far. The filmmaker co-wrote the screenplay for Werewolf alongside Sjón, the Icelandic poet and novelist who previously co-wrote the Viking movie The Northman with Eggers. Sjón also has been announced as the co-writer for a new Labyrinth movie being directed by Eggers. Chris Columbus, who produced Nosferatu, is on board to produce Werewolf. While Universal hasn't had much success with their recent attempts to bring classic monsters back to life for today's audiences, with this year's Wolfman performing poorly at the box office, their Focus Features branch is looking to pick up some of that slack. Nosferatu has outgrossed recent Universal monster films, including The Invisible Man, Renfield, The Last Voyage of the Demeter and Abigail, and the aforementioned Wolfman, so staying in the Robert Eggers business and allowing him to make his own prestige monster movies is a wise choice. Yeah, I'd forgotten that technically Last Voyage of the Demeter and Abigail are Universal monster movies. Obviously, they've taken the approach of not going down the typical... Oh, Renfield as well, I should say. I don't know if I mentioned that. By not going the typical route of Dracula, Wolfman, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, Abigail does technically have Dracula in it. And The Last Voyage of the Demeter does have Dracula in it. So, and Renfield has Dracula in it. So we got three Dracula or Dracula adjacent films right there. And I enjoyed all of them. You know, to some more than others, but generally enjoyed all of them. They're all decent films. But they weren't the huge successes that they maybe could have been or should have been. Through, I think, faults of marketing, not sure. But I'm a Robert Eggers fan. I had a great time with Nosferatu. I really enjoyed The Lighthouse and Witch. And Northman I thought was decent, but I never really was that interested in that setup anyway. I mean, it's a gorgeous looking film, but I was never really that fussed about watching it like I was with the other things, because it's not necessarily horror, it's more like a historical action film. But I'm hyped. I'm a Robert Eggers fan. I am hyped for this next feature, especially as he's mentioned that it's going to be his darkest thing that he's written yet. So, Ghouls and Fiends, that's it for the horror news. That was the news. Oh, 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 oh.
This is God.
There we go. Now, it's finally time, and I've run out of coffee, so this may be quick reviews, but we'll see how we get on. It's now time for the reviews. And we're going to start off with a retro review. We haven't done a retro review in a little while. Not for any particular reason, just I kind of have found that when I have had time to watch a horror film, I've ended up looking on like Shudder, Prime Horror, those kind of areas, and nothing's really kind of jumped out as a retro film that I think I'd like to give that a rewatch, or ideally a first time watch. I do prefer to, when it comes to the reviews, to kind of have a fresh perspective for me. And a film that I'd noticed has been on Paramount Plus for a little while, I just haven't got around to watching it, is The Keep from 1983. But I suppose what initially put me off starting it, is that Paramount Plus, as mentioned on the last show and I had a bit of a rant, has introduced ads, and it's one of the worst ads implementation in a streaming service. I do think that there's maybe been some feedback which is taken on board, because I have noticed when I've watched my trashy TV on there that it's less obtrusive. There's still ads that go on for like 3 minutes, but it's not every 5 minutes. So, you know, you're not getting like 10 minutes of ads in a 20-minute show. But it is, you know, off-putting. But I watched The Keep. I think there was an initial ad at the start, and that was it. So that was good. And I don't know if that's the case with all their films, but if that is, okay, that's less off-putting, good work on the service. But The Keep is a 1983 supernatural horror film written and directed by Michael Mann, starring Scott Glenn, Gabriel Byrne, Jurgen Prochnow, Albert Watson, and Ian McKellen. Set in Romania during World War II, it follows a group of Nazi soldiers who unleash a malevolent supernatural force after setting up camp in an ancient stone fortress in the Carpathian Mountains. It's an adaptation of the 1981 novel of the same title by American writer F. Paul Wilson. Musical scores composed by Tangerine Dream, which should give you an indication that the score in this is incredible. Filmed in Wales and at Shepperton Studios during the autumn of 1982, The Keep suffered numerous post-production issues, mainly the death of special effects supervisor Wally Veras, who died before completing his work on the film. The film was also subject to significant editing troubles, as Mann's original director's cut ran 210 minutes in length, which its distributor, Paramount Pictures, mandated to be cut to 120 minutes. After test screenings of the 120-minute version received unfavourable audience responses, the film further truncated to its final 96-minute cut, which was released theatrically in 1983. Okay, so I'll read the initial bit of the plot, but bear in mind that the film went from being a 210-minute length to 96 minutes. And just sort of factor in how that may transfer plot coherence wise to what the film ended up being. The 1941 in Romania, following the commencement of Operation Barbarossa, a motorized Gebirgsjäger unit of the Wehrmacht, under the command of Captain Klaus Warman, arrives at an uninhabited citadel, simply known as the Keep, with the aim of taking control of the Dinu Pass at the Carpathian Mountains. Two soldiers, Privates Lutz and Anton, attempt to loot a metallic icon within the Keep, but accidentally unleash a spectral entity which kills them. That being, known as Radu Molosar, proceeds to kill 5 more soldiers in the following days and begins to take corporeal form. A detachment of SS Einsatzkommandos, under the command of sadistic SD Sturmbannführer Erich Kampfer, arrives to deal with what is thought to be Soviet partisan activity in a nearby village. He executes 3 civilians as collective punishment and takes another 5 as hostages, despite Ruhrmann's protests. Oh, okay. Okay, where to start? Okay, so the first thing to talk about with this is the music is incredible. It's so dreamlike and synth heavy. It is brilliant. I know Tangerine Dream. They've done some great scores. I associate them mainly with, is it Legend. Um, Let me just have a little look at their soundtrack section. And I think they did Sorcerer, Thief, not seen Legend, yeah. Risky Business, I've not seen. The Keep, I've now seen. Firestarter, I don't know if I've seen Firestarter actually. I think both versions of Firestarter are probably one of the few known Stephen King adaptations that I've never actually got around to watching. But and I never read it either. Flashpoint, Heartbreakers, Shy People, and Near Dark. Okay, Near Dark. Incredible. They also composed 35 hours of music for the video game Grand Theft Auto 5, and they released their own version for the theme to Stranger Things. There we go. Very, 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 very cool experimental music. So that's a highlight in this. Another highlight is I think the effects are really, really fucking good for a film from '83. Like, the effects are sort of ahead of its time. There's moments where one character who's gone down into this kind of hole area at the start encounters this smoke-like presence, and when they're pulled out of the hole, the top half of their body's been ripped off. That looks gnarly. There's moments where characters are basically having their essence sucked out, and it's coming through their eyes and their mouth, this like smoke before their heads explode. Like, I'd heard about the Keep and heard about these issues of it being released and why wasn't it readily available for a long time. Legendary almost. Images of the monster in this. And I initially thought the monster looked in the images kind of crappy. It does look pretty cool in the film. But the actual effects work in this is pretty damn good, I have to say. Now, and I'd say the other positive would have to be Ian McKellen's performance. He is very good in this. Now, that being said, it is very apparent that there's been cuts to this film because as it progresses, it does not make a ton of sense. Characters get introduced and you're just like, wait, who's that? Where have they come from? And you have to kind of just go, right, okay. Not necessarily sure that I follow this. I didn't. Maybe I need to have a rewatch. Maybe I need to read the book of The Keep, although I'm not buying books this year. Very much keeping the book buying to non-existent for this year until I've got through my to-be-read mountain. But it is a bit incoherent, and I think that's more of a fault of the cutting. And I mean, a 210-minute length film in 1983 is a bit much. It's a bit indulgent. Yeah, like they'd have had to have been scoped to kind of go, right, we need to make this a little bit more appetizing for your, at that point, modern cinema going audience. And I don't think a 210-minute length supernatural horror film in the mid 80s would have really sat well. Just wouldn't. The horror audience want to see an hour and a half to maybe 2 hours tops, and that's kind of it because you're in for the ride. But the detriment of that has then meant that it's a little bit incoherent in places. I would have to say, and I haven't even put the artwork on screen. Goodness me, straight into it. And I haven't put the artwork on screen. I don't necessarily think that the positives outweigh the negatives. I think it's worth a watch, but ultimately it has been held back by the cutting room floor. I'm going to give 6 out of 10 to The Keep. There's some good stuff in there. The effects work is good. The music's incredible. Some of the performances are pretty good. No one's bad. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and not in a David Lynch good way, in my opinion. Next up in our reviews, I got around to finally watching on Sky Cinema Lovely, Dark and Deep, 2023 American horror film written, directed by Teresa Sutherland in her feature-length debut and starring Georgina Campbell. Lennon is a backcountry ranger starting a new job in Avores National Park, where in the past a number of fellow rangers as well as members of the public have gone missing, including Lennon's predecessor. In her ranger cabin, Lennon keeps track of these missing people. During a hike, she becomes lost and her handheld transceiver's batteries give out. Lennon hears distorted sounds and messages over the transceiver, even with its batteries out. She is found by fellow ranger Jackson, who guides her back and asks her why she joined the park rangers. Lennon avoids the question. The rangers receive a notice that a hiker, Sarah Greenberg, has gone missing. The rangers, coordinated by head ranger Zhang, form a search party, but Jackson orders Lennon to stay at base camp in case Sarah returns. Spurred by her memories of when her younger sister, Jenny, disappeared in the woods during her childhood, Lennon disobeys orders and searches for Sarah. She finds Sarah in the woods at night, bloody and disorientated, asking Lennon if she is real. Lennon notifies the team and Sarah is rescued and taken to receive care. Zhang notifies Lennon that she is fired for disobeying a direct order from Jackson and to await airlift out of Avores in 5 days. When Lennon rebuffs that they found Sarah, Jackson pointedly responds that she found Sarah. Okay. I think what I'm going to start off by saying is this is an 87-minute run length. It does feel a little bit more like 2 hours. It's got an interesting enough story once you get to the end of it. I did appreciate that. It's shot very well. Georgina Campbell, I think, is really, really good in the lead role in this. And I appreciated the story as it reached its conclusion. But it doesn't really build up a huge amount of tension that well. Like it is a bit boring in places, I found. There is a moment, if you were to search for Lovely, Dark and Deep images on Google, one of the ones that would stick out is this pretty horrifying looking ranger whose head is almost like a mesh of blood and tree roots. It's kind of going upwards and it's just this kind of mess of bloody roots almost. But that's one moment. That you see that once for a couple of seconds, if that, and that's kind of it in terms of hinting at what is potentially going on. The story does take into this kind of maybe otherworldly type realm, maybe alien in origin sort of realm, in discussing where these people are going, if they're just getting lost in the woods or if they are being trapped in some way, without kind of going into too much of spoiler territory. And I thought the conclusion to it was okay, interesting enough. There is some revelations, some moments of remorse, but it felt like it kind of needed something more. I don't know if you needed more shocks, if you needed something to just... I mean, there are moments which, if you looked at them in isolation, would be kind of shocking. But I did just find myself fairly bored for this film. And there's a shame. It's a shame, because the story there is okay. But I'm going to give Lovely, Dark and Deep 5 out of 10. Shot well, decent performances. It drags for a film that's under 90 minutes, which is not really good. It's not what you want. It's not what you want, a film to drag that's only an hour and a half. And then finally, the Shudder exclusive release of 2024 Canadian slasher film Dark Match, written and directed by Lowell Dean, starring Aisha Issa, Stephen Ogg, Sarah Canning, and Chris Jericho. Yeah! The film is about a small wrestling company that takes a gig in a town where things are not what they seem. Typically, this is a film where there is not much to read upon, so I'm going to have to use my god-awful memory. I'll read what's on good old IMDb. A small-time wrestling company accepts a well-paying gig in a backwoods town only to learn, too late, that the community is run by a mysterious cult leader with devious plans for their match. So, in terms of the cast, Aisha Issa plays Miss Behave. Yeah, so you've got your typical sort of wrestling names. Mo Adan plays Enigma. Stephen Ogg is Mean Jolene. And Chris Jericho plays a character called The Leader. I had low expectations of this. I mean, Jericho's is a wrestling legend. He's maybe sort of stayed prominent in AEW a little bit too long. but he does still have his moments where he can be entertaining. Not all the time. Sometimes it is a detriment to the show, I must say. As a wrestling fan, I've got to give my honest opinion. Wrestling legend, sometimes it's a bit too much. And in his performance in this, it's not. Initially, I was thinking, oh God, he has fallen off a little bit because he's had some acting roles in the past that have been pretty good. But more recently, when I've seen him in things like this and what was it called, Jay and Silent Bob reboot. I can't remember the full title, but the more recent Jay and Silent Bob film, which wasn't that good really. It was a bit disappointing. But the setup for this is we have this 80s wrestling company, and it's very sort of authentic looking with the TV spots where it's like, Misbehave faces off against her rival, blah, 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 in a grudge match. And, performing shows to very small crowds. And, everyone sort of knows everyone. But you got this guy, Chris Jericho's character, the leader, who was fairly big in that scene before he went uber religious and sort of fell off the mark. And their wrestling company gets this gig, very high paying gig, but it's out in this weird kind of little community where there seems to be something a bit nefarious going on. It's a little bit backwards, as mentioned in the blurb. And when they start getting to the show where it's like, oh, this could really be big, it could really sort of help the show take off. And they go into these matches, but as the matches are occurring, it's a case of the only way that these matches can end, and there's like an earth match, a water match, a fire match, the elements. The only way that the matches can end is with one person killing the other. They're literally, and it's called dark match because the dark match in wrestling term is a match that's gone on before TV, so it's like an untelevised match. But the matches themselves, pretty uber violent. This is a film where I went in with those low expectations, thinking, "Oh God, a wrestling horror film, which should be my bread and butter. Love wrestling, love horror." But normally they're not very good. The ones I've seen, I haven't seen all of them, but they don't look very good usually. This was a lot of fun. The gore effects aren't overly gratuitous and over the top, but they work well. They look pretty cool. Like a match where they have to put, like, it's kind of like, I guess, Kickboxer or Bloodsport. I think it's Kickboxer, where they've got to put broken glass on their hands. There's broken glass in the middle of the ring, and then they like kind of punch each other, which is then slashing them up. Like, that was all really well done, leading to a pretty effects heavy finale, maybe potentially hinting at a sequel, or probably just more for like a little cool moment. It exceeded my expectations. I actually had some fun with this. It's better than it had any right to be. This is probably the highest review score that it's had, but I don't really have any kind of major negatives. I mean, yeah, Jericho is a bit hammy in this. I think he can perform better than he did, and he's sort of, when he does appear to wrestle later in the film, he is sort of dressed a bit like Demolition, which I was never around during that era of WWF, WWE. But whenever I've seen retrospective images, I thought, were people fans of Demolition? Because the way that their dress looked a little bit too weird for for me. No. Maybe it was a case of you had to be there. They were cool in the day, but I don't know. I don't see it. But outside of that, it's fun. I'm going to give 7 out of 10 to Dark Match. I enjoyed it. I think you turn your brain off. You don't go in expecting much. It's all right. It's fine. It certainly didn't drag. Anyway, Ghouls and Fiends, that is it for this morning's. Although it almost looks like nighttime because the weather is so shit today. This morning's Ministry of Horror. I'm going to go get another coffee. Thank you very much for watching, listening. Make sure you share it on whatever platform you are watching or listening to this on. If you want to get the show early, 48 hours early, head to patreon.com/Ministry of Horror. We also go out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, and apparently Audible, but I haven't actually seen it on there, so I don't know. But we're trying to expand the reach as much as possible. And Twitch Live shows go onto Twitch every other week is the current plan, but we do gaming streams, twitch.tv/Tezius. And just to sort of hammer it in again, please give the channel a follow and a sub, usually Prime sub if you have it. And also on things like YouTube, share it around, give the channel there a sub, all that good stuff. Anyway, that's enough of me. Thank you very much. I'll catch you later. Goodbye.